Good evening, and welcome to this evening's meeting of the Commonwealth Club of California. You can find the club on the internet at commonwealthclub.org. I'm Joe Garofoli, your moderator for tonight's program. I'm a political reporter for the San Francisco Chronicle, co-founder of the political video blog Shaky Hand Productions. You can read us online at sfgate.com. And now, it is my pleasure to introduce our very special guest, Ed Lee, Mayor of San Francisco. Now, about 5 months ago, if you mentioned the name Ed Lee to just about any San Franciscan outside the political circles, they'd respond with a question. Who the hell's Ed Lee? Unless you're connected to San Francisco politics, you didn't know that Ed Lee had worked for 4 San Francisco mayors after about 21 years and was the city's city administrator, the person on top of the city's bureaucracy since 2005. And he had some very powerful friends and sponsors, like former Mayor Willie Brown and Chinatown power broker Rose Pack, who his kids call Auntie Rose. So when San Francisco's often fractious Board of Supervisors couldn't agree on who should replace Gavin Newsom as mayor when he was elected to be California's lieutenant governor, Brown, Pack, and Newsom suggested a compromise pick, Ed Lee. The board approved him 10-1, and they don't approve anything 10-1. Now, who is Ed Lee? He was born in Seattle, the 4th of 6 kids. Dad ran a restaurant until he died when he was about 15. His mother's a seamstress, raised the kids. They grew up so poor, the mayor told his daughter recently that he and his siblings would scrounge around in the basement to look for stuff to give each other for Christmas. In one box, he gave somebody an old shoe. In the other box, he gave him a shoelace, and then he had a package. He won a scholarship to Bowdoin College in Maine, a town with few Asians in it. The other students believed him when he jokingly say he was Bruce Lee's brother, the martial arts. He returned to the Bay Area to attend UC Berkeley Law School, and for decades carved out a career as a civil rights attorney before he began working for city government. First as an investigator in the whistleblowers department, then working his way up through. And in January, as we just heard, just a few decades after California passed laws forbidding Asians from owning land in California, Ed Lee became San Francisco's first Chinese-American mayor. Now, not only do people know who Ed Lee is, his mustache has its own Twitter feed. Right now, I actually feel bad for our radio audience because they can only hear his mustache. This is truly an awesome thing up close. His predecessor, Gavin Newsom, was famous for the amount of hair gel he used. Now, Mayor, do you use any product in your, no product in the mustache? No. Nothing. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mayor Ed Lee.
Should I stand up here, Joe? Is this right, or should I?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here at the Commonwealth Club and to share with you what it's been like for the first quarter or maybe a third of this year, but also to begin by telling you that this is a very, very unique city. And I continue to be so enthralled by the wonderful people that live here, that work here. Even though I've finished the 9th of 10 budget town hall meetings, numerous meetings with community-based agencies, and inviting people to room 200 that hadn't been there for years, as they tell me. I'm hearing so many stories about why people came to San Francisco, and just reinvigorating the cause that people had and the reasons that they had, and whether or not their dreams or their ambitions were fulfilled by the investments they made here, whether they're here working or they're here living with their families or they're trying to conduct business here. It's been wonderful. A lot of people have been asking me, do I really enjoy it? Well, the word enjoy is a little strong, given the duties that I'd set out to do. I made a commitment that I would do this for a year. I also made a commitment that I would be non-political. I made a commitment that I would try my best to unify the city, and then set out to do at least 5 priorities. And at least one of them have been fully accomplished. But the 5 priorities were course, our budget, balancing the city's budget, we still have a $306 million gap we're trying to fill. I've got pension reform, which I'll talk about later. We have the America's Cup and getting that off the ground. Then we have my embracement of local hire and what that all means for this city. And then finally, I was thrust upon with the obligation to make sure that I selected a police chief, not a temporary police chief, a chief that will carry forth what I consider to be one of the most important things in the city, that is to secure the public safety that all of us deserve in a great city like San Francisco. I think I've done that with the selection and of course, now the appointment of Chief Greg Suhr. That's been, I'm still smiling from last week about that because so many people have come up to me, and clearly you expected a chief who had spent 30 years of his life in the city to know people, but I didn't realize how many people Chief Suhr has really known in every part of this community. And they come up to me and they thank us for making that wonderful decision. You will see right off the bat that Chief Suhr's got his priorities set out straight, and he will be a great partner in the conduct of the city and to make sure that our police force and all the public safety agencies work together collaboratively, and that we produce a higher level of public safety for the citizenry here. Well, I set out for a number of these objectives to perform those things in the most non-political way and to give it my whole, full 150% attention. That meant for me to not be distracted by other offices or what I'd be willing to do. I am, today, I am telling you I'm going to be perfectly happy to be perhaps one of the first mayors that ever comes back to his city job. The job that I actually got paid a lot more for, but also the job that I was appointed to as city administrator, because that's been wonderful for me to administer the affairs of a great city and to know that the city is made up not only of numerous wonderful neighborhoods, not only just a high number of just attractive commercial and residential corridors, but also a city that I've come to even appreciate even more now as mayor, and that is a city that is international in stature, one that resonates with so many people across the world, people who want to continue visiting here because of not only the experience they had here, but because of what we represent. And that representation is not easy to explain at times, but it begins with a very, very common attribute, an attribute that says our city is so diverse, and we celebrate our diversity. I'm a product of that, that I will continue making sure the doors of government are open to everybody who wants to serve this great city, people who can show their love for it, can show their appreciation for it. I will continue doing that. But because of its international stature, our city of San Francisco enjoys being really the attraction for the whole Bay Area. So when companies or when visitors are deciding where they want to go, spend their money, make an investment, or just visit and have a great time, they will think of San Francisco in so many positive ways because we have allowed ourselves to become and evolve ourselves as an international city. That is so important. So many cities are trying to protect their coffers and protect their investments to be the city that they are. I want to continue being the city that people hope us to be, to put a positive aspect of hope in the city. And that means today, and it will mean for some time, that my administration reflect the strongest effort it can to create and sustain jobs for everyone. If I've learned anything in my visits throughout the city, it's been that everybody wants to get a job. They want to be here. They want to be able to sustain themselves here. We know how expensive it is in the city. I know how expensive it is. I made one of the biggest, most nervous financial commitments buying a house here in my whole life. And that was when Mayor Willie Brown ordered me that if I wanted this job, I had to move into the city. And I gulped a couple of times because finding a 3-bedroom house in this city was kind of an enormous task. I did it while my kids were jumping up and down on the bed saying, we're going to Disneyland, we're going to Disneyland, because their vision of San Francisco was a place of play, a place where their eyes are open everywhere they go, and they see things, they can touch things, and they can get the culture and the arts, all the wonderful things that we've invested in that have made the city successful. But jobs continue to be the thing that I've been trying to do in the city. It will resonate in all the decisions that I will make because it is the responsible thing to do for any major city now. And whether or not we consider ourselves a local city, a regional city, or an international city, it's job creation and it's business attraction that makes the city run and run well. And then for all of you here, I know that you have great hope that this city can somehow, for your kids and for your brothers and sisters, be able to have decent jobs here that can maintain, that they can spend a good amount of their careers in. And that's why I spend a lot of time with Supervisor Kim and Supervisor David Chu and the whole Board of Supervisors talking about mid-market and what we could do there to sustain businesses. And that's how we came about on our agreement and finally on the passage weeks ago on the mid-market payroll tax exemption. That was our effort to tell the new companies in the city we wanted to welcome them and we wanted to understand what it was that was blocking their ability to stay and to grow. And to hear a company, not just from the CFO, not just from the president. When I visited Twitter, I actually closed the door and they allowed me to speak to the engineers, to the workers, to people who were actually doing the work, the engineering work of Twitter. And as we closed the door and as the CEOs left the room, I kind of laid out, so, okay, kids, I'm a little older than you. What do you really want out of the city? And in very plain language, they said, Mr. Lee, Mayor Lee, we like the culture of the city. We like the local restaurants. We like the fact that we can work here for odd number of hours, and we want it to be safe. We want to make sure we're able to ride our bikes to work. 25% of them ride to work. They've got bike racks in every floor of the building they're in now. And they also said that they wanted us to expand the experience of bicycle riding, of making sure the city was green. All of the young engineers love being part of that. And they too said they love the diversity of the city. That gave me the clearest indication that these were the next generation of workers in the city, people who will build industry, and then to realize what Twitter and a company like that has done all over the world, being a conduit to so many events that have occurred. Even the latest event that has occurred, they were still part of it, that Twitter was feeding information to the whole world about what was going on. And then to have that product and name brand be suggested as a San Francisco homegrown product, we haven't heard made in San Francisco for a long time, have we? It used to be garments, it used to be other things, other icons, but now to have a engineered technology product made and engineered in San Francisco kind of sounds neat to me with potentially 400 million users across the whole world. So keeping a company like that will grow their employees from 350 employees to the expected 3,000 in the next couple of years will be a fabulous contribution to the change that we expect in mid-market. That's what we're trying to do, and we're seeing implications of that happening already. And I wanted to let you know that my last conversation with the Shorenstein Group, Doug Shorenstein, met with me, and he purchased the Furniture Mart building literally in the month of December. He's about to spend $80 million retrofitting and seismically upgrading the Furniture Mart even before Twitter spends its money, which will be around $10 to $15 million, renovating the space that they need for their engineers. So that's 80 plus another 20 million already. We've got a $100 million commitment in the first year when this payroll tax exemption was passed. I think that's a great indication. Now we're seeing smaller businesses being attracted. Pearl's Burger will be opening in August on 6th and Market. I just had lunch with a commissioner at the Passion Cafe, which is located on 6th Street. Wonderful place. Got to try it out. And then we will have a police substation on 6th Street That'll be opened probably by the end of this year, early next year, as they begin the renovations there. We've already got a commitment from our new chief of police that it will be staffed. So there's a lot of things happening that will change the face of mid-market. But again, it's job creation, it's jobs. There's so many other things that we're doing that are job creating. Clearly, America's Cup, very exciting. We produced the People's Plan to move 200,000 people every day in the year 2013 towards the latter part of that year. We're excited about that. That People's Plan has been put on the website. It is already being interactive with people who've got ideas, perhaps better ideas of how to improve that plan. And so we'll be sharing that. We'll be sharing that with the mayor of Oakland and with the mayor of San Jose, getting their input, because the America's Cup has never been about San Francisco only. It's been about San Francisco as part of a whole region, welcoming one of the greatest races in the world, and that we hope, if we do this well, maybe Larry Ellison wins it again and we can continue hosting it at Ifanaina. That'll be a great objective to do. I have the budget in front of us, as I mentioned earlier, working very hard on that. But guess what? We're also trying to change how we've done the budget. You know, these yearly fights where we're fighting over what to save and not to save have become the brunt of many jokes, of many laughs about whether the city's really serious about it. Well, I'm getting the budget into a more serious situation. And so I'm bringing to you tonight a copy. And I'll leave with you here the first copy off the press. It's a new book. It's entitled The 5-Year Financial Plan for the City County of San Francisco. I'm trying to change the way we talk about the budget so that we approach it from a more sound financial planning instrument, not just trying to fill holes and argue with ourselves about each year's gap, but to suggest to you there is financial stability if we plan for financial stability. All of you know that. You know that from your own way of conducting your own lives. I've known that too. And as a city administrator, when we introduced the 10-year capital plan and we started telling departments we're no longer satisfied with what you try to put up every year, we need to put it in priority. Because in order to keep the promise to the citizens that we won't increase their taxes and still use our bond programs responsibly, we've got to set out that plan. We've got to do it and put discipline into it. That's what I'm trying to do with our budget. I'm no longer satisfied, and none of us should be, about an annual budget. It should be 5 years of budget planning, put in the discipline, make sure we have goals set out, spend within our means, and then build according to that plan. That's how we get to the financial discipline. And that's also how we have to approach pension reform. I'll be hopefully before you and the general public with the hope that we only have one ballot measure in front of you that will be a ballot measure that unifies the whole city, including our labor unions, including our departments, and including the Board of Supervisors, to have one plan before you this fall that will tell you how we're going to correct the cost overruns of our pension and health costs to our employees and make sure that we're on a road where it no longer interferes with our general fund to the tune of $125 million as it is doing this year. So again, a lot of time spent on the finances of the city, straightening it out, and I get to do it in the most non-political way. That, if there's anything that I can say that it's fun, it is fun to talk to people without having to create new promises and maybe fulfilling ones that we've all agreed to for so many years. Making the city safe, making the city solvent, and then finally, for a few moments, I want to talk to you about the other principle I shared with departments in the budget. It's making the city continue to be successful. Again, that goes back to what I started earlier tonight. What brought you here to San Francisco? What made you excited to invest in your house, your business here? It was because it's things like diversity. It's because we know that we've got a very, very excited counselor corps that Charlotte Schultz and George and I are all working together to continue working and bringing in the sister cities and making sure that we have excitement as a world-class international city. Because with that comes the interaction of culture, more business, and then the learning of what other countries are doing, and just for a hope that maybe, because when we signed the United Nations Charter here back in those early years, we continue that dream that San Francisco becomes the place where things can be dialogued and happen in a peaceful way, and that we can suggest that we still can have that international dialogue here. That, along with the diverse corridors of the city, the neighborhoods that are strong, the different people that have built their futures here, that's part of being a successful city. I want to continue that. And we'll continue to have a safe, a solvent, and a successful city. And to do all those things and to get back to the basics of what made the city great, what continues to make it great. And I get to do that in a non-political way and have, I think, the unprecedented dialogue with the Board of Supervisors, that we can get agreements, not yell at each other, not take so much political positions as positions that are for San Francisco. I thank you for this time, and I'd be very willing to answer questions tonight. And hopefully I've given you a glimpse. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Marilee. Before we start talking policy and the city stuff, I wanted to hear a little bit more about growing up in Seattle. And as you said, you're the fourth of six kids.
Yes.
And tell us about how the way you grew up shaped who you are now.
You know, I don't really talk that much about my growth because it was hard. It was pretty hard life. We grew up in housing projects in Seattle, and all went to public school. We struggled with being in a large family, and my dad was a cook, and my mom was a seamstress. So I think kind of typical for a lot of Asian immigrant families, you find those skill levels where they can do. And then I had the unfortunate episode of my dad dying when I was in high school. So we literally had to be on our own. 6 kids, 1 mom, full-time seamstress. And so we all struggled, and we sacrificed, and we learned how to enjoy life in a different way. That's how you get these stories about our little Christmases. We actually had a lot of fun wrapping up presents from the basement. Still remember that. And then I was one that, because I was in the middle of the pack, and my older brothers got everything. They got, to play football. And, they got to do a lot of things that American kids wanted to do. We ended up, my sister, my younger sister and younger brother, we were like the last 3 of the family. We were the ones doing the laundry for the family. We cleaned up the house. I did all the gardening around the house. We did all those things that, particularly after losing my dad, we had to do. We had to keep up. So we struggled, and we knew what working hard was all about. And I worked in restaurants in my early days. And then I got a lucky call to go to this great college, Bowdoin College, that was recruiting people from the West Coast. And my history teacher, I'll never forget him. He said that, Ed, you're not made for the big university. University of Washington was where everybody went, unless you got lucky and went to Harvard and Yale. I got put on the waiting list, by the way, for some of those. I did try. But this little liberal arts college, which you didn't know where it was, but you'll learn, was willing to get you out there and put you on a 4-year scholarship. So I took the risk, and it was one of the best decisions I made, because that was one of the best experiences I had, just being in one of these small liberal arts colleges in the East Coast that was completely in the opposite side of the world.
And even though, tell me about the, but you were one of the few Asians there, and the Bruce Lee joke, it really
yeah,
tell people?
Yeah. Well, actually, if you remember, I'll never show you. Don't talk to my wife. She has these pictures of me in college, and my hair was down to the shoulder. We were. They didn't know what I was. I mean, when you looked at me, I had a mustache, long hair, these big, huge rim glasses, and you couldn't tell if I was Russian or Indian. You had to just say, "Who are you? What are you?" And I got a lot of those questions. And so when people found out I was Chinese, and I was 1'5" on the campus, and there was just a lot of ignorance around Chinese Americans around the campus. So they would ask, I had 2 jokes then. I was either Bruce Lee's brother, or a descendant of Robert E. Lee. Whenever I got really patriotic with somebody, I said, well, you know Robert E. Lee? That's how I got into college. But I used that opportunity those 4 years to allow my mind to just, I loved studying. I mean, it was one of those places where you can read books, you can interact with the professors. None of my classes were any more than 10 students at the time. And you can literally talk to your professors and find out what it is that you were interested in, and they could interact with you. That was, I think, the most welcoming of that college experience.
Now, you said earlier that you're just here on a part-time basis, or a temporary basis to be mayor. You said you don't want to be mayor, you want your old job back. It pays a few $1,000 more, some more job security, and there's already several people running for mayor and they're raising money. But you have until August to make a decision, ultimately. And now what if some of your powerful friends came to you and said, you know, we don't like who's leading the polls right now. They're going to be terrible for the city. We'd like you to run. Would you consider it then?
You know, they've already done that. And as powerful as they are, I've been very polite in telling them that I actually think it's kind of neat to have a mayor go back to helping the city in maybe a unique way. If I have a time period now where I can change some things so that there's a more unified thought process in the city, that perhaps the standards of actions, and dialogue are more open, and that we help change the economic business climate in the city so that we can support the kinds of things I've talked about already, that I can help carry those things out. I don't think you have to be mayor to do it. I understand the power of the mayor's office, but I feel that I will exhibit my best contribution while this time is here, and do my best, and hopefully have left with a positive legacy, and then I'll still be here to help carry some things out.
How do you avoid being a lame duck, though? People say, "Wow, he's gone in 9 months." Just blow it off.
By not quacking, I guess. I think I'm working on things that need so much attention that there is no such thing in this year as lame anything. I think people want to continue that dialogue about how they can get things done. There's so much to do, though, and while I set out on these 5 priorities that I named, and I'm feeling that we're going to get through many of them in a very positive way, there's so much other things that are coming that were not part of the agenda. Whether it's continued examples, because I know mid-market and other places are going to happen, but they need constant attention by somebody who can pay attention to it. And the person that cannot pay attention to it is someone who's running for another office. The person who can pay attention is someone who set aside everything and says, I'm going to pay attention. That's what I want to do in whatever capacity I have. But you know, the mid-market payroll tax thing has caused other businesses to come forward. I've got this whole group of technology companies talking with us today about how we can help them. And then that has led to yet another group of businesses who perhaps said, well, what about us? We've been around. I mean, I sat down with Charles Schwab the last 2 weeks, with Doug Shorenstein, with John Stump and Wells Fargo. These are companies that have been here for a long time. And they want to make sure they continue having a great connection. Because guess what? They're still contributing. I was here this last weekend. I was participating in this program. It used to be called Christmas in April. Now it's called Rebuilding Together. They were doing some 100 projects on Saturday throughout the whole city, 39 of them that were in District 11. So I happened to be there, and I went around some of the projects. Hundreds of volunteers from Wells Fargo, from Adobe Systems, from all these companies that have volunteered, and they are our corporate citizens, and they're our CEOs, and they're companies that have been around a long time. So what I hope to do is continue working with the established companies that have been here, sacrificing and being part of the city, and then welcoming in a new generation of companies that I would also call San Francisco companies that will be the new philanthropists, the new supporters, the new CEOs that want to make San Francisco their focus on improving life and putting out examples and models for other cities.
These companies in this new group, including Yelp, Zynga, Salesforce.com,
Yes.
and now Schwab and Twitter, these are companies that are doing well. Isn't this a form of corporate welfare that we're handing out to them?
You know, some people might refer to it as corporate welfare, but I don't, because I have been learning, and all of us need to learn more and more, how do companies grow? There are times where you think that they're making a lot of money, but then it's shareholders, it's business, it's the expenses that they have in the city. Companies have a choice. And time and time again, I'm reminded, companies have a choice, and they don't have to be in San Francisco. In fact, many of them are not wanting to be in San Francisco. It's their workforce that's telling them that they should be in San Francisco. And they may lose that intelligent workforce if they leave, because it's not economically sound for them to be here. We have higher taxes. We have other disincentives. And I'm trying to work on those to make sure that they're more even. This whole discussion around the payroll tax exemption is kind of punishing people for having large employee groups. Why are we doing that as opposed to having a tax base that could possibly generate the same amount of revenue but not be so punishing against a number of employees that you have when we're trying to grow and trying to find jobs for everybody? So there are things that these companies are talking to us about that we haven't had a good dialogue around for many, many years. And I would not accept the premise that it's corporate welfare or corporate giveaway so much as reigniting the things that we've always wanted companies to do with and for the city. In addition to employment, they spend a lot of time donating to great causes and being part of a good public-private relationship.
Have we done a study, has the city done a study, or are you planning to do one, to see how many companies, a lot of companies talk about leaving, threaten to leave, but few do. I know the Public Policy Institute did a study a couple years ago saying, you know, there's very little amount of companies that move out of state, at least. Have we done one of those in San Francisco?
Well, I still remember those days. I mean, Chevron moved.
Yes.
You know, Bank of America moved. I mean, these are huge partners for many, many decades. Icons, if you will, and they moved. And then I look at also what is not, that maybe is not that clear to people, is what companies are located in Silicon Valley and Brisbane that are not here, where I would have thought they would move here first, but they're not. And when you look at those companies, be they Google or HP or other of the Silicon Valleys, that's why I went down a couple of weeks ago to talk to the Silicon Valley Leadership Forum and their CEOs. I had a chance to coordinate with Mayor Kwan and Mayor Reed, and we talked to them, and they were telling us why they wouldn't move into San Francisco. And that gave me yet another agenda that it isn't corporate welfare, is what can we attract here for them. And I know a key is education. We've got to have an intelligent workforce that keeps them wanting to be here. That's the number one thing. That's why I'm investing so much time in creating a very, very strong connection with our city college, with our school district. They've got to make sure that we have a very, very invigorating education system. That will be a key for many years to come. And that they tell us in no uncertain terms. They come here because these are the best minds, not just for them to recruit, but if they have marginal engineers, the fact of being present here in San Francisco makes their marginal engineers better when they're interacting with the other better engineers that are here in the city. They told me about that as well. So I think there's many ways to attract businesses, but I know that's going to be a key into anybody's strategy, is having a continued intelligent workforce.
On the budget, on the city finances, $306 million deficit right now. You know better than anybody where the bodies are buried. As your role as city administrator, as a fraud investigator, you've asked the department heads to come up with 10% cuts.
Yeah.
correct? And
Yes.
Another 10% contingencies. They're saying all the fat's been cut in previous years. Where would you cut? Where can the city save some money? Give us a couple examples.
Well, first of all, you know, my very first job wasn't the city manager. My very first job was the whistleblower investigator under Mayor Art Agnos. I created that program. Some people believe, and maybe there's truth as to why I've accelerated in all my jobs, is because I know where the skeletons are. But I think that the secret to our budget has, at least in these times, because we are scraping to the bone, it'll be a combination of evening things out that, for example, our public safety divisions have to get a little smarter in what they're doing. And for example, this move that Chief Surs made just the other day, did he need 4 assistant chiefs surrounding him? He determined he did not. One of his very first moves, before he asked his workforce to contribute, is he made them all deputy chiefs. That saved like about $75,000 immediately, right there in salaries. Are there things that can continue happening? Yes, I think there's more efficiencies to be had. This is where we get ideas from even city employees that are telling me continually every year what else we can do to save in workers' comp, to save in expenses that we shouldn't have to be spending. Some areas need to shrink in terms of the workforce, and we are contemplating those things as well, and still keeping our promise of having a core amount of services that the city needs to have and have them funded. There are departments that have historically been left alone. No one's being left alone this year, including public safety.
Who's been left alone in the past, do you think?
Well,
step up?
In the past there were public safety agencies that kind of were hands off.
Police department.
Yeah. Maybe they gave what they thought was contributory in terms of salary increase denials.
Right. Last 2 years they haven't gotten their
That's
raises.
right. And a lot of us did even more. We didn't just deny increase. We actually got decreases. Mm-hmm. In July 1st, I'm making $10,000 less than what I'm making today. You're looking at me today, my salary is going to be $10,000 less because we're contributing to the pension system as of July 1st. So there are sacrifices that are being made throughout the whole workforce. I do want to say that people know that I've worked with them alongside, and I truly appreciate all the labor unions' efforts. I'm working very closely with them on the biggest challenge.
Could we see fewer officers in the street, or do you think it'll be they'll be just taking less money?
No, I think they'll be taking less money. We want to have an approach that has the same number of officers. Clearly, we may not be getting new classes for our police officers for recruiting new ones, but we still have an ability to hire across different cities. People all want to come to San Francisco to work, and so if we do have retired spots open, then we will do what they call cross hires from other departments, other city departments.
And now a quick reminder that you are listening to the Commonwealth Club of California radio program. We're talking with Ed Lee, Mayor of the City of San Francisco. Speaking of the police department, as you mentioned, one of your first moves was to hire a police chief. And you hired Greg Sir. This is an audience question, and one of mine too. Now, the head of the police officers union was overheard saying that he, quote, bought the chief's appointment. And others have said, including some of our speakers, that he's a member of the Old Boys Network, lifetime police officer there. Now, was that a political choice? One that if the union got one of their own as chief, they might be a little bit more amenable to renegotiating their pension, to kicking back some money in salary, or foregoing their planned raises for a third consecutive year. How much of that was the politics?
Well, none of that entered into my decision-making at all. I set out, and as you know, it was something that occurred so suddenly as they were literally confirming me. There was the vacancy that was created. Mm-hmm. I asked the very same commission who helped select the last chief, Gascon, to use the same very thorough process of coming up with the best candidates possible. Mm-hmm. And I took them not only at their word for it, I reviewed things with them about what they went through, because I had concerns about how they went through it, whether they had an open dialogue with various communities of the city, whether they had contacted as thorough of a job as possible, all possible candidates. And they did a very, very thorough vetting and process. And so once I satisfied myself with that, then I proceeded to look at the recommendations that they had, interviewed each one of them twice, and felt that the best came from this group. And I focused solely on who was the best, and for those reasons, and the reasons that I had set out to look at the characteristics that I wanted, I interviewed groups of people within the police workforce, people who had felt they had strong opinions and wanted reflections about what a chief should be, in addition to the commission. And then I had various people from throughout the city tell me, and I got tugs on the suit jacket every one of these town hall meetings about people that they thought were important to them, and a lot of different names surfaced. That all came into play along with my very serious look at someone who's going to reform, continue the reforms that Chief Gascon had started, making sure we had a very, very dedicated effort to train officers so that they wouldn't cross the line. That was another part of my objective here. And then someone that I think would not only continue those reforms, but really present a command presence for the public as well, and someone who the public can talk to. And you know, when you look at all of that, I continue to smile. It has nothing to do with politics so much as people have known Chief Sir for a great many years. And some of the critical factors that came to my mind were not about what the POA was saying, so much as people in the Bayview who knew this captain by his first name, and the kids who knew this Captain Sir, who was there supporting the Omega Boys and Girls Club, the YMCA in that community, did the same thing when he was the captain in the mission. His reputation around the police department has been impeccable, and yeah, his life has been exposed. So has mine. And when we talked in my last interview, I did look him straight in the eye and says, you know, some people will say that maybe you're part of the Old Boys Network. And we had that conversation about what he's about, what his life has been about.
What did he say when you said that to him?
He said that it's like me. We had a chance to work with each other, and we went back to those years when he was out of uniform and working with the PUC as their kind of homeland security. I had a chance to work with Greg there, and I recalled those years where he had thrust himself into that job so thoroughly and had known and begun to know all of the intricacies of the water system throughout the whole peninsula, knew the groups that were there, interacted with the federal state authorities for that. A very, very thorough job that he had done. That kind of focus, that kind of dedication were, again, skills that came back to me and said to me that he can take care of the changes that are needed in the department, and he will make not only a commitment, he will actually see it through. And those were the final decision makers for me. Is how he would impact and continue making that change. So I've said over and over again, he's the guy that's going to change this place from the inside out, and that's a very different approach.
Speaking of pensions, the city owes and health benefits. The city owes $4.36 billion in promised health care benefits to employees and retirees. You have your own pension reform plan, health care reform plan. Public Defender Jeff Adachi has another one, a little bit tougher, and a coalition of labor groups has a third one. What's the incentive for city workers to agree to any of this stuff? How do you bring these three plans, this being San Francisco, of course, right. How do you bring everybody together on this? And what's their incentive to come to the table and agree to anything?
Well, the biggest incentive that I could produce is that all of the proposals that we are putting forth with the labor unions, with Supervisor Ellsburn and Warren Hellman and other members of the supervisors that we've been keeping in touch with, is that we're having each of our provisions reviewed thoroughly by professional actuary folks that we know.
Third parties, not affiliated with the city.
Well, third parties as well, because Warren Hellman brought in some third parties from his side to review. And while he was doing that, we have the official city family of reviewers through our controller's office. And as you remind people, Ben has a 10-year appointment, so he is very much apolitical on this. But he has actuarial people on his staff and that people that he's hired also as independent contractors, reviewing the actual numbers and what we can save with this proposal and that proposal. And with that kind of expertise, along with keeping very close advice from our city attorney at what's legal and what's not legal to do, because we have issues with that are confronting us about how far we can go and how far we shouldn't go. All of that has been a part of this effort that we've officially been doing in a very patient way, sharing that information, sharing those proposals with union leaders in a meet and confer basis. You will find, and I trust that every union, no matter what their position is, and they could be disagreement with us, they will not say that they weren't included in a very transparent way, that this was done with all of the serious effort that the city is doing. And to me, you've got to reward that effort with a very serious response to it and pay attention. And paying attention means that we will do our best to get to a point where most of us, not all of us can agree, but most of us will agree, this is the way out. And city employees, as well as the public, needs to have this in front of them. And they don't want to, and I assure you, nobody here wants to be confused with 2 or 3 proposals. You want to be able to ask the question, will this solve it for the long term? And we are pushing, and I'm pushing, again, as a non-politician, that this will solve it for the long term. I'm holding very hard on certain numbers that we have to be at, particularly the contributions that current employees must make, including myself.
We have an audience question saying the salaries and pensions are astronomically high. Will they be cut, and should they be cut?
Well, that's a separate part of from the pension. We have to balance we have to be able to have a pension system that pays for itself, and we will work on that plan and present it. And I predict maybe 2 to 2.5 weeks at the most, we'll have something before the Board of Supervisors that will get the ball rolling. Having said that, salaries are always being reviewed, and we have to have that careful balance between excessive salaries and the salaries that will attract the best talent, as well as salaries that provide a living wage for city workers.
A very expensive city.
Because it is a expensive city. While I get paid a lot more than others, I want to make sure that those that work for me are very satisfied that they can take care of their personal business with a decent salary and a decent pension as they put the years in.
You are listening. Another reminder that you are listening to the Commonwealth Club of California radio program, and we're talking with Ed Lee, mayor of the city of San Francisco. You mentioned the America's Cup is coming, it's coming to San Francisco in 2013.
Right.
And it's expected to bring a little bit over $1 billion of economic benefit to the city. Now, it's also, in exchange for paying at least $55 million to shore up some of the aging piers along the waterfront, race organizers get developmental rights and a 66-year lease on some of the piers. Now, the city's very well-respected budget analyst, Harvey Rose, recently said the city could wind up paying millions more than the original deal said. Is his report accurate? Do you believe his report is accurate? And is this going to be a good deal long-term for San Franciscans?
Mm-hmm. Well, the report, of course, has been reviewed by both economists on all sides, and I do think that's a great deal. I mean, not only for the historic nature of the event, but for the investors, people putting up their own monies to help us repair very, very dilapidated structures. One of the reasons why the port is not really a maritime operation as much as it used to be is because those port properties are so in bad shape. and it is very expensive to repair the underwater structures for these ports. I say that as your city administrator who's involved in reviewing all these capital plans. We haven't put the port in front because it's too expensive. They've had to rely on private investment, smart investment, to make some of these piers turn around. And so the cruise ship terminal is one of those very, very big focuses. And we are looking at not only building a new cruise ship terminal down there, but having it available for that site for the America's Cup, the center of it, and then being able to use it for generations thereafter. Everything we're putting in along the wharf, all the investments that we're making down there are going to last well beyond this event. In fact, it will last well beyond, hopefully, several of these America's Cup events because we're trying to do it smartly, whether it's transportation or infrastructure investments. We're making sure that those structures are there for the benefit of San Francisco, its public, and its tourism and all the uses that we have, that we will have in between these events as they occur. So we're even doing street improvements there with the America's Cup monies. And those investments will obviously help with transporting people around when there's no event at all.
So it's going to be a good deal for the city long term, not just for the developers or getting those development rights.
Absolutely, absolutely. Those improvements will not solely be for this event at all. They'll be for the permanent use for everybody.
One of the questions from the audience is, as the economy creates more homeless folks, what more can be done to divert the homeless off the streets and into housing and job training?
Mm-hmm. Wow, if I could answer that easily. That continues. One of the reasons that I came to work for enthusiastically with the former Mayor Gavin Newsom was I truly believed in his whole care not cash and his approach towards ending homelessness. And we have had great minds, including Angela Alioto, who headed up the 10-year plan to end homelessness. And the solution is permanent supportive housing, housing that we're already putting up, but certainly not in the pace in which we would like to because the economy is down. So that will continue to be, I think, the target, the focus of a true answer to this challenge about homelessness is permanent supportive housing. And the more we build of it, the more that you'll see individuals changing their lives. In doing so, we continue to have a very active human services agency on the ground engaging these individuals, getting them in the shelters that we do have, and trying to operate programs like Project Homeless Connect and others where we are bringing in tremendous amounts of volunteer support, whether it's free eyeglasses, dental care, and all the others. But the hope, again, is to engage people to make better decisions. You can't force people. We're still not in a society where we're forcing people to change their habits. We have to persuade them to do so. There are no laws on it. We can now at least strongly encourage people to not lay down on the streets. We have of course, the sit and lie ordinance, and the police are being very careful in utilizing it. They've already started getting out warnings. They are bringing people into paying attention to this, and we've done it a very human way. This first few months, we're offering services to people out there that we know need to make a better decision, and we're doing it the San Francisco way. And then eventually, we have to get people into situations like community courts, where they face a choice, and they have to make a better choice for themselves. And it's all about getting people to pay attention to the choices they're making. They ultimately, I believe people don't have to be on the streets, but some people advocate that they have no other choice. I think there are choices out there. You just have to get in a position to make those choices.
Let's talk quickly about the San Francisco 49ers. They want a new stadium. They're proceeding with your predecessor had a bit of a falling out with them. But you recently met with the Niners owner, Jed York. And what would have to happen for the Niners to seriously consider playing in a new stadium in Hunters Point? Right now, they're sort of focused on Santa Clara. What have they told you about what it would take for them to come back here?
Well, they haven't told me anything more than what the public has already known. They have a very aggressive campaign with Santa Clara that they're doing for their proposed stadium. what I've tried to do, first of all, is do what I think is very natural for me, and that is to form a very solid relationship with Mr. York and make sure they're treated as they should be. San Francisco 49ers is a San Francisco football team right now, today, and will be for at least 5 years. They are our team. Where is the enthusiasm for that already? And it should be there. And, you know, it's kind of like when the Giants, you remind yourself, you know, when the Giants won the World Series, but when they were in the down and outs, did we love them? Did we treat them like they were ours? Of course, some of us in the synagogue, we didn't. We cursed them. We cursed Candlestick. We did everything. And now that they're winners, God, everybody loves them. There's no downside. What I think during these very hard times, where they suggested they're looking elsewhere, these are probably the most challenging times. And what I've offered in my year is I asked Jed, keep an ear open, keep your allegiance to this city, because I'm keeping mine. I have so many generations of people that still want to see the 49ers succeed. And so having a relationship is, first of all, important. And then continuing the viability of our proposal so that if the NFL tells Mr. York, which they have kind of, from what we hear, suggested that maybe the economics aren't there. I'm not praying for bad, you know, for a bad situation for them, but should the economics be there, I want to move the 49er Stadium that we have plans here from being maybe what it is today, kind of a B, a plan, into maybe a 1A, A1 plan, and to have a relationship such that it's not either embarrassing but a natural thing for Mr. York to say, why don't we take another look at what San Francisco has to offer? And you do that not only by having a relationship, but you also do that by like celebrating what they're doing today. They're still our team. They are still in our communities. They're funding a lot of programs for our youth. I'd like to have a welcome party for Jim Harbaugh very soon. He's our coach. There are things that we have done in the past that have exhibited them being our team. I told Jed, and he's very, very excited about maybe having another one of those San Francisco 49er lunches that we used to have. We get everybody together and root for our team. That's the way we do things in San Francisco. We might disagree with their effort down in Santa Clara, but that doesn't mean they're not our team.
We mentioned Rose Pack and Willie Brown earlier. How often do you talk to them, and how much of a say do they have in your decisions?
I know them vaguely. Willie and Rose have been wonderful friends for so many years. They give me great advice. I asked Willie a lot for advice about, especially when we've had such a very serious fight with Governor Jerry Brown over redevelopment. Mm-hmm. And I have never intended for Jerry at all to be a negative, because he's doing what he needs to do at the governor's level, at the state level.
It's threatened to be eliminated from the state budget.
But
which would hurt a couple major projects here.
Oh, absolutely. But it also hurts us in long-term ways. That we've used redevelopment the correct way in the Bay Area, and the governor knows that. But I think he's been convinced that there are other things to gain by its elimination. So in that dialogue, I've asked Willie for a lot of advice about how to make my play, if you will, in Sacramento, and how does a mayor do that with all the changing term limits that they have up there, and who do we talk with? Great advice he gives me.
What did he tell you?
Be bold. Talk to people you ordinarily won't talk to, but also build allegiances as a mayor. I've got, for this great city of San Francisco, I can pick up the phone and call Antonio Villagrosa in Los Angeles, Chuck Reed, Mayor Kwan, all the mayors in Fresno and along the peninsula. And that was his first advice. Get the 10 biggest mayors together and start forming an allegiance. Because when you put that together, and you're not alone just in San Francisco, you've got a powerful voice up there. People listen, and they listen across aisles for what the big mayors are saying, because we are the mayors of very urban settings here, and we have most of the populations of the state in our urban settings. So That was one great advice. The other is keep talking with the governor, keep back-channeling with his staff. Don't ever form a wall, even though you may disagree. Keep the doors open there. And then talk to people across the aisles. Just because we're kind of more blue in San Francisco.
And a lot more blue.
Yeah, a lot more blue, right? That we can't talk to people on the Republican side because guess what? A lot of our investors on these projects, whether they're Treasure Island or Hunters Point, they're Republican. Yeah. And it's kind of neat. I was laughing at it because it's kind of this irony where we're trying. The only investors that are trusting us and putting their own personal monies and their wealth into our projects are Republican investors, and we're trying to convince a Democratic governor to save these projects for our own communities. But then I have fun with doing that because I said, well, here we're not trying to be blue or red. We're actually all trying to be green, and that's a neater thing. We're trying to create the jobs, and we're trying to create the economy better. And I think these days you got to move towards green a lot more.
Yeah. And we have former Republican Secretary of State George Shultz in the front row here.
Well, of course.
A couple more quick questions here as we're running short on time. We got to talk about shark fin soup. Now this we have to talk. We have an audience question about it. It's a Chinese delicacy. Yeah. But to get shark fin soup, it often involves a practice known as shark finning, where the fins and tails are cut off of live sharks. They're tossed back in the water to die. Now, the State Assembly wants to ban the sale and distribution of shark fins throughout California. This would affect a lot of Chinese restaurants. And you took a semi-controversial stand by admitting that you do eat occasionally, shark fin soup, and you oppose the ban. Now, the audience question is, how do you defend your consumption of shark fin soup, and explain a little bit about this.
Well, I told the truth. I mean, that's the number one thing, and that you may or may not get that out of a politician, but I don't eat shark's fin at all, very rarely, but it is a delicacy that is used for weddings and for special banquets, so it's eaten there. Having said that, I did want to say that I am a very strong supporter of the fishing standards that the U.S. has in the international coastal waters about how you properly fish. There are reasons for those standards being created, and perhaps not all countries are following that, but we need to enforce that. That is where the education is. The fishing practices that I personally abhor from what I've seen. So that's why I wasn't ready to support a ban, was because I wasn't sure whether a ban is going to get there or not.
You have been sort of educating people about the cultural implications.
But I want the science to tell us what's the proper thing to do. I mean, I am very open, and that's what I've been on the environment, in a lot of the environment issues. If there are species of sharks, if there are continuing things that we need to do to protect the ocean's environment, and that banning of eating this would add value to that, I'm very open to it. But right now, I think the focus has been, at least to the point where I'm educated, and where I think a lot of San Francisco, and a lot of Chinese who eat sharks, or Asians that eat a lot of this, is that they understand that the fishing practices is the thing that should be banned. And we should focus on that, and we're not so sure whether the banning of eating the shark would actually directly contribute to that at this time.
We have, unfortunately, we've reached the point in our program where it is time for one last question. Okay. And it is a audience question. I'll go with that audience question. We said, how can a local hiring policy be made compatible with the existing de facto situation of more than half of our city employees, especially police and firefighters, not being San Francisco residents?
Well, there's obviously policy, and then there's reality. And so the policy that I embrace is local hire. I want more of San Franciscans who pay a lot more in everything to live here to have a good, fairer chance at the jobs. And we began with this construction ordinance where we have special steps to be taken for contractors and subcontractors to show that they're making every effort to comply with our ordinance. That's been important to us because a lot of contractors have brought workforces from the outside where we had people who were ready and willing to do that same work here in San Francisco. So that, in my opinion, is not fair for all of us who are paying for those projects through our own taxes to not have a fair shot at those jobs. Having said that, when you look at the city workforce, I began by saying, well, Willie, I remember when Willie told me, you want this job? Move your blankety blank into San Francisco. And I did that, and I made that sacrifice. Can everybody do that? I'm not sure, because it is hard and expensive. I would like to champion more workforce housing in the city that offers teachers, firefighters, police officers, and others a chance to actually afford to live here, and help them make that commitment so that it's a little easier. Because for the most part, maybe for their salaries or what their future is, it's been hard to make that choice to live here in San Francisco.
Our thanks to Ed Lee, Mayor of the City of San Francisco. We also thank our audiences here and on the internet and on the radio. I'm Joe Garofoli, and now this meeting of the Commonwealth Club of California, the place where you're in the know, is adjourned.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Charlie.